let's start with the joy piece. It's true. I am the person on this planet who loves your period the most. That is a fact.
What you say is if you sync your cycle with your lifestyle, you won't have
PMS. The male biohacker says, don't take melatonin. Well, that's true if you're a man. But if you're a woman, there are countless studies to show how important it is of a biohack to take melatonin.
People are asking me why I am doing this conference just for women, because I said, you know what? They had everything all the time. Now it's my time to help women to learn more. I'm Dr. Esra Çavuşoğlu, and I've been living a sober life for the past 19 years. My battle with addiction drove me to seek new methods, devices, and supplements to improve my physical and mental performance, enhance my quality of life, and ultimately live healthier for longer. From my experiences in addiction recovery, biohacking, and longevity to the latest global developments, from groundbreaking entrepreneurs to expert academics, the conversations I've had over the years are now featured weekly on Soberhead Podcast. Welcome to Soberhead Podcast. If you ever feel like your energy, mood, and productivity change week to week, you're not imagining it. As women, our biology runs on a different clock, one that's not 24 hours, but about 28 days. Today, I'm joined by Alisa Vitti, the pioneer of cycle syncing and author of In the Flo. She explains how aligning your nutrition, exercise, and productivity with your hormonal phase can transform not just your health, but your life. We talk about bioharmonizing instead of biohacking, managing stress, and why symptoms like PMS or fatigue are not normal, but stress signals from your body. From menstrual health to menopause, this episode is about reclaiming your power through knowledge and learning to work with your biology, not against it. This episode of Soberhead Podcast is brought to you with the support of Gedik Foundation for Education. For over 30 years, Gedik Foundation has been providing opportunities for youngsters, children, and women to realize their dreams through scholarships, projects, and social work. And we're proud to be on this journey together. Investing in education is investment in the future. Subscribe and support us in our quest to bring you the most current scientific data and continue your access to the world-renowned experts in their fields as guests on Soberhead, with Turkish translation and completely free of charge. Comment on the episodes, like, and share. My dear Alisa Vitti, welcome to Soberhead Podcast. This is going to be so exciting. We're going to be having this wild ride because I'm going to be learning all the things that I didn't get a chance to learn up until now, which I'm in my 54 years old menopausal time. So this episode is going to be so crucial for women, for themselves to listen, and also women who has a daughter that in any age, because most of my audience is 70% women, and I'm pretty sure, 100% sure almost, that the information that we're going to share here today, they probably going to be like, what are you talking about? So, Alisa, you have multiple books. One is Women Code. The other one is In the Flo. You have a super useful application on smartphones for women to be able to track their menstrual cycles. I think it's the first time I heard the sentence, cycle syncing was from you. These days, I'm hearing from everyone, like all the fitness instructors, dietitians, doctors, whatever. And no one talks what you're talking about. I did interview multiple OBGYN, longevity experts, name it. I had such big names in my podcast, but only Piraye Yurttaşbayım. She's this Turkish-American friend
I know
of
her.
mine.
I know her well. Yes.
Yeah, friend of mine.
Love her
And
work.
she said, and I took note here actually, she said that women reproductive organ cannot be just called, the ovarian system cannot be just called a reproductive organ. This is the master organ for a woman to take care of it so well, and anything is not working properly is showing us how woman longevity would be affected. So with that start, welcome again. How would you like to start? Because, I think I gave a good description a little bit for people to understand, but, you have your own story and you explain things so well. Welcome again.
Well, thank you for having me. It's such a pleasure to be here. You and I have been trying to coordinate for some time, so I'm thrilled that we're finally doing this. Yes, I started on this path because I was suffering, and I was planning to become an OBGYN. I went to Johns Hopkins University, and I was experiencing back at the age of 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, all of this hormonal chaos. So if you want to picture me back then, I was over 200 pounds, covered face, chest, and back in painful cystic acne. I did not get my first period until I was 2 months shy of my 16th birthday, meaning I did not develop through puberty the normal way. And the whole time, doctors were telling me, it's normal, it's normal. Then once I finally did get my period around 16 years old, I only got it 3 more times or 4 more times, 2 of which were chemically induced with synthetic progesterone because I was going so long between periods that the doctors were like, we need to force a period. And yet no one was telling me why I was feeling this way, why I wasn't menstruating. And there were sort of mental health issues as well. I was depressed, I was anxious, I couldn't fall asleep at night, I couldn't wake up in the morning. I felt trapped in my body, and I felt unlike a young woman should feel. And it wasn't until I was at Hopkins, actually, that I had access to some research. Because remember, this is all happening before the internet existed. I found myself in the library looking into medical journals to see if there was any information that could help me. And I did discover in an obstetrics journal a small little snippet on something which was called Stein-Leventhal disease, which was the original name given to Polycystic Ovarian Syndrome, which is what I had. And of course, in that moment, I recognized myself in this article, and I took it to my gynecologist the next morning, and I said, we have to do all the testing. I'm certain this is what I have. Long story short, we did the testing. She called me back. She said, you're right. This was the correct diagnosis. Meanwhile, it'd been 7 years. No one had diagnosed me with anything. And I said, okay, good. So now what do we do? And that was the sort of the life-changing and the career-changing moment, Esra. This was like I sat down and she said, well, there's no cure. This is going to get worse. Your heavy weight now is going to turn into diabetes, infertility, heart disease, put you at greater risk for cancer. You won't be able to have kids, maybe without, IVF. And, we'll just try to medicate you along the way as your body breaks down for the next rest of your life. And here I'm 20 years old. This just felt like a unacceptable future prognosis. But I also got some clear messaging that this was not my future and that there would be another way. So I made a little promise to myself that I would, figure this out, but then I would also build an ecosystem for other women who were suffering hormonally, because I recognized that I was one of millions of women, not just with PCOS, but fibroids, infertility issues, perimenopause symptoms, all the things that we go through in our journey as women from a hormonal perspective that conventional medicine just doesn't have a lot of support for. So that's what I did. I dove into the research. I did functional nutrition training. I apprenticed with naturopaths. I did all the things that one could do to figure this out. And I put together some protocols that really started to work in my body and watched, the weight come off. I watched my skin clear up. And of course, I got my cycle back. And it was incredible. And then I went on to eventually build what is FloLiving.com now, which is sort of the world's first femtech company founded in 2012. And we're the sort of hormonal self-care operating system. So you can use the MyFlo app to track your cycle, to get your cycle health score every month, to get supplements that I formulate for specific conditions, and to get support online, telehealth coaching to help you deal with your issues. And it's been a great journey of, transforming my own health, but also being able to impact the hormonal health of many, many women.
Actually, it's going to be super helpful also to people that, I consider myself as a biohacker, but, I don't do what you do. And people always say, like, what can I do without buying the gadgets? And you're considered one of the original women biohackers. So this podcast also is going to help women, maybe not men, but women, to do it without needing to have expensive
I love that you're
instruments.
bringing that up because actually, I have a personal newsletter that I send out every week, and I just wrote about this last week, which is biohacking has its place. Biohacking is definitely an interesting approach because we do need some tools to compensate for modern lifestyle, like your blue light blocking glasses, because I know it's nighttime where you are.
Yep.
And those are good biohacks. But when it comes to promoting health span and really taking care of your longevity and protecting your hormonal health as women because of the importance of your ovarian function across your life, it isn't biohacking that we need. It's instead what I call bioharmonizing. What do I mean by that? Bioharmonizing is this idea where we align with our biological systems, right? And we take care of them the way nature intended it to. So that means you're going to be, eating to support your blood sugar, managing your cortisol levels, supporting estrogen elimination. These are all the things I wrote about in my first book to help your endocrine system function optimally. Then, as I wrote about in the second book, you're going to be attending to your infradian rhythm, this second biological clock that you have as a woman that governs your menstrual cycle. And this is why I created the cycle syncing method, so that we had a method to take care of this infradian system, this cyclical pattern.
I'm going to ask all about it,
Oh,
actually.
yes. But the idea is that we align with these patterns so that we can give our bodies the building blocks it needs to do its job. The more you bioharmonize your diet and your lifestyle, the less biohacks you need, the less gadgets you need. Here I am, I'm 48 and a half. I'm not on any HRT. I'm not on anything. I don't do much, quote unquote, biohacking, right? And I'm still here cycling, ovulating, sailing through perimenopause, right?
So then tell me, you kind of explained, but what is cycle syncing in simple terms? You kind of said it, but maybe in simple terms you want to, because you put everything in one basket now.
Cycle
let's
syncing.
dissect.
Let's dissect it one by one. Cycle syncing is the method I created after uncovering this second biological rhythm that women have called the infradian rhythm. So just like we have a circadian clock, which is why you're wearing your blue light blocking glasses, for example, women have a secondary clock called the infradian rhythm, which governs more than just the menstrual cycle. Just like the circadian clock governs more than your sleep-wake cycle, right? The infradian rhythm governs, yes, when you're ovulating and menstruating, but also affects your brain, your immune response, your stress response system, your metabolic speed, your cortisol patterns. It affects so much of how you experience your reality, right? And so what that means is men experience their hormonal reality in a 24-hour clock, right? They wake up and they go to bed and they feel the same every day. Women experience their hormonal reality in a 28-day or a 1-month journey, right? You're not the same day in and day out when you are having a cycle. You have 4 unique hormonal patterns within that month that affect the speed of your metabolism, when you have higher and lower resting cortisol, all of which require us to change how many calories we're eating, the types of foods we're eating, the types and intensities of workouts that we do to match our biology, right? So we're just letting the form of our self-care follow the function of our female biology, as we should, right? Because men have been doing this forever. Men let the form of their self-care, their cycle syncing too. They don't call it that, but they have a hormonal cycle, a testosterone cycle. It just happens to exist in a 24-hour clock. So they eat at certain times, they work out at certain times to optimize their biology. And my thesis is that I wrote about in the Flo, is that women should do the same thing with their cycle. You need to optimize your biological pattern, but it is based on both an infradian monthly clock and a daily circadian clock. So we have to take care of both. Men only have to take care of the one.
Okay, so you said we have 4 different rhythms.
4 different hormone ratios within the cycle. So you have the follicular phase, which is the phase after the bleeding ends. You have the ovulatory phase, which is when you release the egg. You have the luteal phase, which is the longest phase of the cycle, 10 to 12 days, that leads up to the bleed. And then you have the bleeding phase, right? Menstruation. Each of these phases has a unique hormone ratio. For example, ovulation has the most estrogen that you're going to see over the shortest period of time. The luteal phase has more progesterone than estrogen, but contains both hormones. The follicular phase only contains estrogen, but, slow increasing levels of it and no progesterone. And then the menstrual phase, this is where we have the lowest levels of all hormones. So each phase of the cycle has a unique hormone pattern signature, if you will. And that has different effects on your metabolism. So for example, in the first half of your cycle, your metabolism is slower.
Okay.
That's follicular phase and ovulatory phase. That means you can eat fewer calories and you'll feel fine. Your blood sugar will stay stable. But then once you've finished ovulating and you're in the luteal phase, your metabolism speeds up. Why? Why does it speed up? Well, because we have to suck down more nutrients from our food to make the endometrial lining in the uterus, right?
It was very interesting at the conference. You shared that I think you were in that second half of your cycle, and you said that you were eating like 6 meals or something.
I eat throughout the day.
I'm
Whichever.
like, is this why? Like the metabolism is faster?
Well, it's faster, and I like to keep my blood sugar as stable as possible. So for me, it looks like, 4 bigger meals and 2 little snacks. That is the goal of the luteal phase, is to eat more calories. Studies show we need 279 more calories per day. Again, we are 3D printing a little organelle every month in the luteal phase. We're making that lining inside the uterus in case you were to conceive. That lining is a very critical part of the first trimester. So we make this beautiful organelle, and it's a nutrient heavy required period of time. So we have to eat. And then it all shifts again. So we go from slower metabolism to faster, back to slower. So you can already see that just the idea that you should eat the same calories every day does not match our biological pattern. That maybe matches for men, but it doesn't match what's happening in our metabolic reality when we have a cycle. Now, if you're postmenopausal, then it's a different conversation, right? You're no longer having this infradian rhythmic effect. You're not having this pulsing of estrogen and progesterone changing throughout the cycle. And studies are very clear that you can go back to a circadian-only pattern where you are doing more intermittent fasting. You can have the same caloric intake day in and day out, and that's beneficial to your biological reality. So we just need to match what's happening in every stage of life, right? And then from a workout perspective in the cycle syncing journey, because of resting cortisol pattern changes, you can do cardio, HIIT workouts, all of that more easily in the first half of the cycle. And then in the second half, the luteal phase, you want to do more zone 2, walking, etc. Strength training you do every day. Strength training you can do throughout the cycle, whether you're bleeding or you're not, doesn't matter. I strength train all the time, every day of the cycle. It's all good. Now, I may do fewer reps in my late luteal, early menstrual phase because I may feel a little bit more fatigued depending on how busy my month was. I had a very busy month, for example, this month of October, traveling, changing time zones. And so this particular period, I felt a little bit more tired. So I went easier on my workouts.
First, let me share a little bit how I was, when I was prepping myself for the podcast, I started thinking of my youth. And I was listening also to the talk that you did in London. And I was thinking, oh yeah, I had skipping periods. And they put me on birth control pill, which I didn't even bother to take because that was even more difficult to follow that weird rhythm. You don't take whatever many days, you take whatever many days, whatever. At some point, it got into a normal rhythm. Probably I was in my early 20s. What do you think happens then to a person who's young? Maybe too much diet, too much, like probably, yeah, I was in Boston studying actually. I wasn't even in my youth. I was in my late teens, early 20s. I was just about like 19, 20 years old.
Yeah, so it's the ovary is very, very sensitive to stress input. In fact, new studies have just come out to very exciting, actually, in the world of ovarian research. The past week, actually, 2 weeks has been groundbreaking, exciting things that haven't been seen for ever. We know that the ovary has synaptic nerves now that are responding to stress input. So just you living abroad, being out of your normal family environment, eating foods that were very different than what you grew up eating, absolutely could throw off not only your blood sugar, which whenever we disrupt blood sugar, we then disrupt insulin, which affects cortisol, which affects progesterone, which will, sort of disrupt ovulation and the cycle and lower progesterone levels. Then when we have elevated cortisol for extended periods of time, meaning a lot of stress, that disrupts ovulation and progesterone, which can make your cycle irregular. Whenever we have inflammation from more processed foods that you were likely eating in a university environment, bad oils and gluten and things you weren't used to eating, all of that inflammation is registered on a mitochondrial level from the ovarian perspective, and the ovarian mitochondria, which are responsible for making your sex hormones, stop functioning as optimally. So now we have every possible way that, sort of master regulating hormones are off with insulin and cortisol. Then we have stress inputs that are affecting these new synaptic nerves that we're seeing on the ovary. And we have inflammation that's affecting ovarian mitochondria. So it's very easy for women. This is why it doesn't matter if you live abroad or if you're going through a stressful period of time, or if you're a young girl and you're not eating healthy foods and your cycle is off. This is why we have to take care of our ovaries from a young age. I just today published a newsletter about why are young girls going through puberty so early. Around the world, this is a huge problem now. Pediatricians are seeing girls come into their office at 6.5 years old with breast buds, Esra. Okay. And then they're getting their periods at 9. This early pubescence is dangerous. It increases the risk of all the big diseases of inflammation, diabetes, heart disease, cancer. You do not want your girl going through all of this, but we have to recognize that, hormonal problems are not just for women of a certain age. I had hormonal problems as a young girl. I see younger girls having hormonal problems. And then I have, in the past 25 years of taking care of women as a functional nutritionist, I've seen women of every life stage, whether it's first trying to get pregnant the first time, trying to get pregnant the second time, perimenopause, post-menopause, struggling with hormones. And it comes down to how are we taking care of our biological systems, and how are we taking care of our ovaries, and how are we taking care of our mitochondria?
Then let's please come to like step by step help these women, because I was like really, I was in awe when I was watching you, like how you're celebrating your menstrual cycle and how you teach your daughters to do the same and daughters' friends to do the same, and how like I've never heard someone who's so excited that they're having their period still. And, if anything, we're like, oh, thank God I have menopause and I don't bleed anymore, because it's like a whole thing. But the way that you were explaining, I saw the joy in you. Really, it wasn't just like just a stage talk or just try to compete. You really cherish every part of that menstrual cycle, and you have your guidance to women how to live their life. So can we do that? Like, can we help women how to go from day 1 to day 30, like not day 1 to 3, but like cycle by cycle for their brain, for their energy, for their food? How can they optimize themselves in order, because what you say is if you sync your cycle with your lifestyle and your everything, your nutrition, your workouts, your sleep, whatever, you won't have cramps. You won't have
PMS.
PMS. Yeah, thank you. The word escaped me. I never had that, thank God. But you wouldn't have PMS, and it seems like what you say, that you can push your menopause as much as you can, and you wouldn't have also premenopausal symptoms either. And they can also help their daughters the same way, I guess, if they learn from us.
That's right. Well, let's start with the joy piece, because I think that's really important, because it's true. I am the person on this planet who loves your period the most. That is a fact. And I know that everybody feels that when they hear me talk. And so I'm not surprised to hear you say that. I want to infect you all with just a little bit of that enthusiasm for your period, because your period is an important biomarker of health, right? So in 2016, the American College of Obstetrics and Gynecologists decreed, this is like historic, in fact, that your cycle must now be considered a fifth vital sign. The other four vital signs they take in the emergency room, your blood pressure, your temperature, right? All of these things. Your cycle is a vital sign of health. So if you are ignoring it, would you ignore your blood pressure if you had a bad blood pressure reading? No. Would you ignore it if you had a fever?
Of course not.
Would you feel uncomfortable talking about your temperature or your blood pressure? Would you joke about having symptoms? No. You know to take that very seriously. But unfortunately, because this period thing happens to be about women's bodies, and this is tied into a whole bunch of ancient negative stuff, right? We feel a little bit uneasy connecting with it. But I'm here to tell you, none of that stuff, none of that narrative is scientific, and it is an essential, vital sign of health. So if you come to me and say, Alisa, my cycle is so symptomatic. I have terrible PMS, terrible cramps. I break out during ovulation. And I would say, wow, not only are you not in good health today, but we know from the biocycle study that was done in 2015 that you will not be in good health postmenopausally based on your cycle health today. You're at double the risk of the big four diseases of inflammation just because your PMS is raging, right? So diabetes, heart disease, cancer, and dementia are the result of a lifetime of ignoring this vital sign. We cannot go on this way as women. We are having all sorts of what I call unnecessary suffering because we have don't understand what our cycle, how it works, and we don't know how to care for it. And we have lost the love and joy that we should have for this miraculous female body that we have. I mean, no big deal, but this menstrual cycle of yours and your reproductive structures can 3D print a human being if you so choose to become a mother. And I've done that twice. It is unbelievably powerful, the female body, and our period is the end result. It's a biomarker. If you're a biohacker, you're looking at your HRV, you're looking at your sleep scores, you're looking at all these other things, and you're not looking at your period every month, what the color is, what are the symptoms, how is the flow, then you're not biohacking as a woman. Right. Are you going to biohack as a man and ignore the fact that you have a cycle? I mean, it's silly, but I like to point out how silly it is because we have to break this pattern of ignoring this vital sign. So that's the first. First step is we have to, and that's why I built a free app. So you can go to any app store, download the My Flo app, make sure it has the circle icon. There's another app that was built by men that has a lot of lawsuits. I have guys. There's some stuff with data. You want to make sure it's the app that I created called My Flo, Flo, MYFLO, circle icon. And this one will give you that monthly score. Is your period healthy this month? Is it getting worse? Is it getting better? You track your symptoms, and I will help you decipher what your period is telling you. And you can use this yourself. You can have your daughters use this. It's free. That's the first place. Understand your cycle and start tracking your symptoms every day. If you want to be a serious female biohacker and you're not doing that, you're missing a huge health vital sign. As far as what to do to that part 2 of your question, you always ask the best questions, you know. It takes me so long to answer them because you ask the best questions. So second part of your question is, what do we do? Well, for cycle syncing, it has 3 pillars. There's the food piece, there's the fitness piece, and then there's the, let's say, productivity piece to work with our brain chemistry changes. So let's start with the food piece. There's a very famous food chart in chapter 4 of the In the Flo book that has gone viral. I mean, everybody on TikTok and everywhere is talking about cycle syncing. And as the creator of this method, I love seeing how many women are sharing it and making it their lifestyle. It's wonderful. You'll also get that food chart inside the MyFlo app. There's a whole cycle syncing feature, so you don't have to memorize the things I'm about to tell you. But essentially, we're going to use food strategically. So you're changing your calories, slightly less calories in the follicular and ovulatory phase, slightly more in the luteal and the menstrual phase to keep blood sugar stable. The calorie amount is about blood sugar stability. That is super important for endocrine function. Then the second thing we want to do is use food strategically to help either break down hormones, specifically estrogen, or make more hormones, specifically progesterone. So in the first half of the cycle, you'll see that there's an emphasis on, especially in the ovulatory phase, lots of raw fruits and vegetables that help the liver have what it needs in its tissues to go through the phases of detoxification to break down estrogen and get it out through the bowel movements, right? Like if you're constipated and you're not going to the bathroom every morning, then we're going to be seeing problems with, estrogen overload, acne, breast tenderness, etc. So in the luteal phase, we don't eat raw foods, right? Because we need to work a little harder to keep our blood sugar stable when the metabolism speeds up. You're going to eat more, think of like more cooked veggies, sweet root vegetables, whole grains, protein, throughout the cycle, obviously, and fats throughout the cycle. But it's a slightly different emphasis on foods. And then in the menstrual phase, when you're bleeding, we actually have studies to show that we are more deficient in certain micronutrients. So I have women eating things that are very mineral rich, like sea vegetables, bone broth, red meats, things that really rebuild the body after going through the bleeding phase. So that's the food piece. Pretty intuitive once you look at the food chart and get the hang of it. The second piece is the fitness piece, right? So first half of the cycle, you can do your cardio classes, you can do your HIIT classes, you can do all of your spinning, you can go and do all those really exhausting classes, cardio classes. In the second half, I would not do that. The studies show that when you do that after ovulation, you turn on fat storage.
Wow.
And you turn on muscle wasting. So zone 2 in the second half only, strength training throughout. Strength train, like I said, every day of the cycle is so good for you. It's a very good kind of hormetic stress. Another gender difference between men and women when it comes to biohacking is how much hormetic stress we can tolerate. And strength training is a really great form of hormetic stress versus, let's say, cold plunging, which is not great for women. And if you do it, the only phase of the cycle where I would say it's safe to do cold plunging is the ovulatory phase. According to traditional Chinese medicine, this is the phase of the cycle where you are the hottest because of that estrogen surge. The rest of the cycle, I wouldn't recommend it. But you can do things like sauna throughout the cycle. That's really, really great. And then the productivity piece, we have because of these different hormone levels of estrogen and progesterone, it actually lights up our brain regions differently at different times of the cycle. So again, if we're looking to improve our health span, right, that's a lifelong commitment to keeping our stress levels as low as we can control, right? Because there's plenty of stuff that happens in life that you can't control. So what are the things that we can do that we can? Well, we can work with what's naturally happening in our brain. Like, did you know during ovulation, the verbal and social centers of your brain are hyperstimulated by that supercharged estrogen dose that you get during ovulation. So why not plan more social activities during ovulation? You're going to be in the mood for it. You're going to have the energy for it. It's not going to be a strain on your energy systems. That same social activity in the menstrual phase, for example, is more stressful to the body, drains your energy, and then puts you kind of, on the back foot, if you will, starting that next cycle. So I try to schedule things as best as I can, and I really aim for just about 50%. I don't go for 100% perfection.
Sure, because your chart is in front of me, and I'm like, how do you pick the concentration versus, creation versus social things?
I balance it out. So the idea is, as women, we're trained to just do whatever is asked of us whenever. And men don't do that. Men don't say yes. They don't default to saying yes, of course. They say, let me get back to you. And then they think about, when would this be an optimal time of day for me to have that meeting or take that call or do this deep work project?
They really think like that?
I think that their conditioning is to think about how to do their best work, what is going to allow them to do their best, to create their best outcome. And I think they take it for granted that the world operates according to their biological rhythm, because it does, and they don't have to worry about it. Whereas women, we're just conditioned to say yes, of course, because remember, we only just got a seat at the corporate table recently, and we still have to fight for our, whatever we're trying to do. Women are less, research on women's health is hardly getting any funding. Women's companies get less funding. So it's, we feel like we have to say yes. But what I'm trying to say is, you can say yes all you want, but when you find that you're constantly exhausted, constantly stressed out, and you do this in your 20s and in your 30s, guess what's happening from a mitochondrial perspective? All that stress working against your biology, right, adds up, starts to create suboptimal mitochondrial function, starts to age the ovary faster. You start producing less endogenous sex hormones because the mitochondria are underperforming. Now we're aging more rapidly, which, by the way, a study came out 6 months ago showing for the first time in all of human history that women globally are going through perimenopause earlier. And why? Because we are cooking ourselves with stress, and it's aging the ovary faster. Your ovary is already the first organ in the body to age. But now, because we are so out of alignment with our biological needs as women, we're causing it to age sooner. And then you go through perimenopause with more symptoms. Just like you had terrible PMS, you're going to have terrible symptoms with perimenopause. And you're going to be at more risk postmenopausally, and no amount of HRT can fix what has been done from a stress perspective, right? It can help, but it's not a cure-all. And I see this in my practice all the time. Women come to me and they're dealing with their HRT and they're like, I'm taking all the HRT and it's not working. And I said, well, how many decades did you go into this, before your HRT dosing, where you were just stressing out your body, stressing out your mitochondria, stressing out the ovary, really not supporting your cyclical hormonal patterns? The degree to which you don't take care of your cycle in your teens, 20s, 30s, and early 40s will dictate the experience you have perimenopause and postmenopausally.
Actually, you say something really meaningful. You say like many girls are going through early puberty and many women are going through an early perimenopause, like at a younger age, but there are more wellness products out there for people to use. Wellness
everywhere, but women are getting worse, right?
Yeah.
And it isn't because we don't have more gadgets and supplements. It's because we are not doing the real work of taking care of your hormones. You cannot out-biohack, out-supplement a poor diet and lifestyle when it comes to our hormones. And I'm not only am I the person who's loves your period the most, but I'm the woman on the planet who's been cycle syncing the longest, right? And I'm here from the front lines of that, again, at 48 and a half, showing us that, the more you take care of your cyclical hormones from the beginning, even before. I mean, I have my daughters taking care of their hormones. They have hormones now, just not cyclical hormones, but they have insulin, they have cortisol, right?
Can
they
you
have
share
melatonin.
that a little bit for
Yeah,
people
for sure.
to share?
We have
with
to
their
take care of our
daughter?
hormones at every age and stage so that when you get to, I'm almost 50, I mean, I feel good. I feel good. I don't have any hot flashes. Like I said, I'm still menstruating. My libido is still good. All is working as it should. Do I look like I did when I was 25? No, nobody does. But am I still operating at optimal levels for my age and stage? Absolutely. And that's possible for all of us, but we have to do the work of actually eating and changing our lifestyle to support our hormones from a young age.
How do you help your daughters?
So I start really young with them. Actually, I start, in utero. So I'm very particular about what I eat when I'm pregnant. And then as soon as they're born, it's breastfeeding them. In fact, in the newsletter I came out with today, there's research that shows if you breastfeed your daughter, that actually helps to delay her pubescence. So the longer you breastfeed, the more you'll help her have a healthier puberty.
I think you gave a really long, you had multiple years of breastfeeding, correct?
Oh,
If
yes.
I'm
Well,
not
I also
mistaken.
unfortunately had to have C-sections, so I needed to do that for their gut microbiome. But yes, I breastfed my first till she was just shy of her 3rd birthday and my second until she was just shy of her 4th birthday. I had my first at 37 and I had my second at 44, which means I just wrapped up breastfeeding about 6 months ago.
Wow.
And I'm 48, and a half, right? So the female body is amazing. If you give it the right inputs, your body is designed to be hormonally healthy for the most length of time, right? Because nature likes reproduction, right? So that's the goal, is to just take care of this ecosystem, this unique female ecosystem. What do I do with my daughters? Well, I feed them a specific way when they're starting on foods. I make sure to protect their gut and their blood sugar. Then when they're old enough, I start to show them how to use biofeedback themselves. So what do we start with? We start with poop. So I have them look at their poo-poo in the toilet and I say, what does it look like? And if it looks like what my daughters call little dinosaur eggs, then I say, what do you think you need to eat to fix it? Because they know it needs to look like a golden banana, right? They say, oh, mama, I need to drink more water. I need to take probiotics. I need to eat more broccoli. So they know that there are 3 things that they should do if they see their poop looking a certain way. And then and then they look at it every time and they're so happy when they see the golden banana. So they're starting a positive relationship with their bodies. Now, my oldest just turned 11 2 weeks ago. So at 9, we started having the conversation of something is happening in your body at 9. Your body is starting to get in action around this thing called puberty. And I don't talk about the period. I just talk about the infradian clock. I said, you have this circadian clock. Now you're going to have this infradian clock. It's going to wake up more and more. You're going to go from feeling the same every day to feeling different each week of the month. And that means you have to change what you're eating and all of that. But right now, to prepare for that, I want you to make sure you are taking care of your blood sugar stability. So my daughter knows that she has to eat a good breakfast with good macros, right? A meal is not complete without protein, fats, vegetables, carbohydrates. She needs that 4 components on her plate at every meal. Her lunch boxes at school look very different than her friends. She doesn't eat any processed foods or junk foods. Then she also the kids eat lunch super early at school. So I know she's going to be hungry well before she gets home. So she also gets a mid-afternoon snack that keeps her blood sugar balanced. So she's very tuned into, I feel like my blood sugar is coming down. I'm going to eat some apples with peanut butter.
So you think it's very important at that early age, the blood sugar?
It's the first thing that the endocrine system needs to function optimally. As soon as you mess with blood sugar, everything else in the endocrine system starts to go off. So yes, I would say in order, it's blood sugar stability from birth onward, then gut microbiome support, then cortisol, melatonin. So keeping their stress low, making sure they're getting movement, and then protecting their melatonin creation. What does that actually mean? It's not simply a good sleep routine for little girls. It's very extremely limited screen time. In fact, a study just came out that looked at, there's like a global shift that happened around 2010 when everybody had smartphones and social media. The impact of that much blue light exposure has impacted women's ovulation globally. And in exposing young girls to blue light down regulates their melatonin production, which ages their ovary, will cause them to start puberty earlier. So I do not allow screens for my girls at all until the age of 5. And then it's 20 minutes occasionally. Now, my oldest is in middle school. She just started middle school, so a lot of her schoolwork is on the computer. Not all day, but some. So she has to wear blue light blocking glasses anytime she's on the computer, and then we have a hard stop at 7. If she hasn't gotten her homework done by 7, she's got to get up early and do it in the morning. There's no reason she needs to be on that screen beyond 7 p.m., and that's because we need her to be making that melatonin to protect her puberty journey. So yeah, it's blood sugar, it's stress, it's gut, and it's this, cortisol melatonin protection.
So is there anything for postmenopausal women that they can do to help their longevity, let's say, because their ovarian system is kind of not working? Piraya said something really funny, like she even made the sound. She says like, her biotech company is working on how to extend the women ovarian system life. And she says like having estrogen hormone replacement therapy is just having like one instrument in an orchestra that you're taking. And she's made this like weird sound, like imagine like it's just like the flute or whatever, something, but you don't have the whole symphony is working. So it's not doing the same thing to the woman's body.
She's absolutely right, and we could not be in more agreement. And, HRT is a tool, but it is not a fix, like a cure. It's an important tool. Imagine that she and I would both agree that there's so much that we have to do to compensate for this, and which it's going to be interesting to think if in the future is menopause going to become optional. Certainly the health benefits of having your cyclical hormones would indicate that there might be a lot of women lining up to make that choice if it was available to them. At the same time, menopause only exists in humans and whales. Wow. And there is some value to the brain chemistry changes that take place. There is a wisdom up-leveling as you go through menopause. So it isn't like this totally negative thing. So we're still learning. Research is still emerging. Sure. We haven't looked at the female body enough to have definitive answers. But what can you do as a postmenopausal woman? I've thought a lot about this, as I will at some point in the next 5 years be there myself. The queen of periods at some point isn't going to have one. And I'm ready for it, because it's very simple. We're going to the statement of letting the form of your self-care follow the function of your biology is even more true then as it is now. So we have a hormonal pattern still postmenopausally. It's just circadian. So you need to protect that circadian master regulating hormones. You need to make sure you're keeping your blood sugar stable. You need to protect against cortisol excess. You need to make sure that you are protecting melatonin at all costs. In fact, most postmenopausal women should be supplementing with melatonin. Melatonin, as Pirayi has looked at, is like the first hormone that downregulates. Before anything else happens in menopause, it's melatonin that starts communicating with the ovary differently. So melatonin has a lot of benefits: protective against breast cancer, protects bone density. Melatonin is really great. And here's where, I get frustrated with this like biohacking community, because, the conversation from men is, the male biohacker says, don't take melatonin. Well, that's true if you're a man, because it can affect sperm. But if you're a woman, there are countless studies to show how important it is of a biohack to take melatonin.
Actually, that's why I'm like, people are asking me why I am doing this conference just for women, because I said like, what? They had everything all the time. Now it's my time to help women to learn more
Yes.
because, more I read, more I listen to podcasts, more I look into researches like, oh my God, we need to live totally differently.
Yes,
like from
that's right.
food to exercise to sleep to whatever. Like
Yes.
our life is like, we shouldn't live the same.
No, we are unique creatures, and our female biology requires a distinct form of care. And any research that comes out that does not have gender-specific call-outs of who was being studied, you need to be very wary of what you're reading. Make sure that they're studying women and women in your age demographic if you're looking at, should I do something like this?
Fitness moves on my podcast with Stephanie Estima, she was sharing like a couple of these barbell whatever, like the bicep curl machine, like she says, like the position of the machine is not
optimized for the female forearm.
Form, as well as farmer's carry. And actually today I did 1 minute of a farmer's carry of the 75% of my weight to see, because Peter Attia keeps saying, and I said, I was just like, oh, Stephanie was so right, it kept hitting my hip. It wasn't like a comfortable move. It just wasn't like, my body was getting in a weird shape in order to carry it. Not just it was only heavy, but also posturally. So everything was taught to us, apparently was designed for men.
Yes, and this is what, why I wrote the second book, In the Flo, because I sort of uncovered that all of this fitness, medical, nutrition research was being done on men and leaving women in their reproductive years out. And I said, well, no wonder everybody's disrupted and dysregulated in our reproductive years, because we're taking the practices that are helpful to the male ecosystem and applying it to the female ecosystem, assuming it will help, but it's not. And in fact, just because I don't want to be a person who's complaining that there isn't enough research. So I actually did something about it.
I was just going to ask that. Go for it, because it's in front of me.
I'm really proud to say that we actually just locked the data on the world's first IRB approved human clinical trial of the cycle syncing method. And we wanted to show, how does this dietary and lifestyle totally natural intervention affect PMS symptom burden and severity, because we know that PMS, according to the Biocycle study, is sort of this indicator of our fifth vital sign. So we need to do something about it. And we had incredible results. I mean, I can only share a few little preliminary results, but we'll be publishing the report soon. I mean, within the first 30 days, 80% of the women had an 80% reduction in all of their PMS symptom burden and severity. Wow. I mean, it's massive. So just very quickly making this shift that we've talked about all throughout this podcast can help you feel the way that nature designed you to feel, which, by the way, Esra, is good every day. You're not, just because you have a period, this whole narrative of like, oh, you're supposed to suffer and you have to have cramps and you're supposed to feel like a different person half of the month and be moody and tired. Those are all signs of distress and dysregulation and hormonal imbalance. And that is your body's biofeedback way of trying to get your attention to please take some action to support your biological system so that your hormones can work the way they should. You should feel no symptoms during your cycle. I have no PMS. I have no cramps. I have no nothing. And you should feel no big, huge symptoms in perimenopause either for, really the longest period of time.
How many women you help personally? Probably application is like millions of people, but...
I mean, at this point in 25 years, it's probably been thousands of personal,
And most of these people had, because they wouldn't come to you if they didn't have a problem, probably.
Correct. I've worked with women who've had, I still see private clients.
No, but what I'm saying, so all these people who are following that flow method were getting rid of their PMS sufferings.
Yes.
Mood, cramps, sleeplessness, whatever, name it.
Yes.
They had an easy perimenopause time, and probably there's some in menopause. So wow, and your study
and getting pregnant when they can't.
You also say about that. You say that you see people pass by the IVF clinics. You see so many young people, which I also know. There's so many.
It's shocking, but it's also doesn't. It's shocking, but it's not surprising because I'm sad that it's happening, but it makes sense, given how dysregulated women are with taking care of their cycle. I mean, if you put a 13-year-old girl on synthetic birth control, you're shutting off her ovulation, disrupting her infradian rhythm. You're depleting her body of micronutrients for decades. Then she goes off. She wants to get pregnant. Her system is already depleted, right? And we don't even have any studies showing the impact of hormone replacement therapy, which is birth control. That is a form of HRT. It's suppressive hormone replacement therapy. We have no studies showing the effect of that on ovarian mitochondrial health. So what does that mean? That means that, if it's creating dysfunction, inflammation, or any sort of problem with mitochondria for women, when they get off of that medication, now their mitochondria, which are responsible for helping them make sex hormones, may not be able to do the job. And so then we're, not as fertile as we should be. So there's so much that we have to do to take care of ourselves. This is why I formulated the supplements, so that we can replenish these lower depleted micronutrients. This is why I created the cycle syncing method, so we can take care of our system's biology with diet and appropriate lifestyle that matches our unique female ecosystem. When you do those two things, you don't need much else in terms of biohacking. You definitely need a little blue light blocking glasses. But other than that, you can go very far with bioharmonizing more and less expensive biohacking gadgets, right? Those should be occasional things for extreme circumstances, but bioharmonizing for women.
You were also sharing at the conference, I don't exactly remember, the color of your period is very important too, you say.
Absolutely. I mean, I was the first person to go on national television back when Dr. Oz had a show showing simulated menstrual blood. I used fruit juices to show these 4 different colors. Should be a fresh, bright, healthy red color like my shirt. And it shouldn't have any clots, and it should be, start and stop nice and succinctly, cleanly, meaning not a lot of...
The whole time from day one
Yeah, it should be just like a healthy flow. You shouldn't have like little drips and drabs, or it shouldn't start with like brown or pink. It should just be like, hello. And then there's the sort of prune juice colored looking blood, where it looks like a brownish color. And this is indicative of lower levels of progesterone, very problematic if you're trying to conceive, and also indicative of early or perimenopause, right? Aging, hormonal aging. Then there's light pink, which is indicative of low levels of estrogen. So this we see in girls who overexercise or who are athletes, they're not getting their period. But this can happen to women who just are doing too much extreme dieting or trying some of the biohacking diets of intermittent fasting that boys are doing. It's not good for women. And then we can see the heavy, dark, almost like mixed berries, like darker purple, blue, and with clots. And that's excess estrogen, and that's also not good, right? So that's why, just like I teach my girls to look at their poo-poo in the toilet, I want you to look at your bleed every month, because it is a key biomarker. Listen, there are femtech companies today that have menstrual pads that are collecting your blood to show if you have STIs, to show if you have diabetes. Your menstrual blood contains countless stem cells. In the future, your menstrual blood will be used as, blood analysis for your general health. But right now, at least look at the color, because just visually diagnosing where you are at from a hormone perspective is very, very essential. But the app will tell you. You just log the color in the app, and the MyFlo app will tell you what it means and what you should do, what you need to know. It's your full guide, right? It's not just, a lot of apps just give you data. But the MyFlo app gives you guidance, what to do, what to eat, how to shift things so that you can have a better period every month. That's the goal. The goal is not just to track, but to have a better period every month of your life.
So there was one moment that you shared. Which part of your cycle is that you like your red robe and your hot,
Tea, yes. So the first,
like.
listen, I went for a full decade from the age of 12 to 22 when everybody was menstruating, right? I didn't get my period. So I know what a gift it is to have, what a gift of health and vitality it is for women to have a healthy functioning cycle. Your cycle is the end result of a symphony, of an orchestra of things working well in your body, right? As we talked about before. So when that symphony is played well every month, I celebrate it because I know what it's like to not have that. So I put on a little like a gown, something like a tunic, and I have my fancy teacup, like it's my fine china with little flowers on it, and I make my nettle raspberry leaf rooibos tea, and I just have a day where I celebrate being female. I'm typically not running around the first day of my bleed. I typically like to be at home. So I'm just doing things that feel really good in my body to celebrate the fact that it achieved such an amazing journey this month. When you really study the cycle and everything that goes into it and all that it's doing from nurturing one egg to fullness, to making sure that egg gets where it's supposed to be, 3D printing the endometrium, all the hormones that have to go into orchestration to make this all happen. It's remarkable. So the fact that I see the bleed and it's the right color and it's at the right time, I just like to spend a few hours making sure that I fully enjoy that journey because I lived without it for so long, and I will live without it again for many decades. And so while I have it, I want to make sure really, I celebrate it.
I feel that your joy really passed through the screen. That's like amazing. Like me, someone who doesn't have her period, I'm like, wow, that's so amazing.
Can you imagine if every girl was raised to fall in love?
I was going to ask that. Please tell our audience, or people, so many people, to have a good relationship with their body, with their period, probably with their health. Therefore, what would be the one thing that you wish schools or families would teach to their daughter?
I feel like if we put the emphasis on really helping them understand their biology more than their sexuality, right? Like, let's focus on how your biological system works. Let's infect them with this passion for being in a female body and all that it can do. If we can just impart that joy and the correct information, right? Everything else works better because now we have a girl who understands how her body works, who's invested in her teens and her 20s to take care of her body, who will be in a completely different trajectory. Like, everybody is constantly like in triage. Women are in crisis, hormonal crisis at every decade, and they're in triage trying to stop the crisis. What if we just never got into crisis in the first place? What would happen to women if they weren't always performing suboptimally from a health perspective? What kind of creative potential would be unleashed onto this planet to solve all of the really big problems? Because let me tell you, yes, when your health isn't working, it's the most important thing. But the body is designed for all of this to work beautifully so that we can use these really powerful supercomputers between our ears to create and solve lots of interesting problems. Solving our health problems shouldn't be the focus of our lives. Supporting them, taking care of them the way they're designed to be taken care of is just basic. Like, for example, you brush your teeth at night, basic. But you don't think about your teeth all day long, right? But when it comes to hormones, because we don't know what to do and we don't do it all the time from the beginning, from puberty on, now we have to think about our hormones all the time. And that's like, should not be the full-time job of a woman to take care of her hormones. It should just be like brushing your teeth. You have a method, you have a system, you do it every day, and you're good for life. And sometimes you might need a little extra support, but it is not the focus of your life, so that you can go and do whatever it is you're here to do this lifetime, to help people, to solve problems. I mean, I just think if women were actually healthier, the world would be a better place. So that's what I'm up to at Flo Living. You know, make no small plans. It's like, yes, we want you to have a healthier period, but that's just the beginning. I'm really here from a feminist point of view to just make sure women have that foundation of good health to go and be the change agents in the world that they are.
Before we close the podcast, I have to share this, that I can picture in my head, because I more or less know my audience now and it's growing very rapidly. And this is going to be one of very important and extremely helpful podcast. I mean, seriously, I learned a lot, but there's so many women out there that, like you said, they're suffering. They don't know what to do. You know, Turkish economic system is not that great. Therefore, they cannot afford sometimes functional medicine doctors, or sometimes, you know, some these expensive supplements. You're giving such tool that they can, you know, organize their month according to their cycle. Therefore, their health is going to improve drastically without even needing to do anything else, and for so long.
Exactly. That's the idea. You know, I mean, I'm first generation American. My parents immigrated after World War II. You know, I appreciate and am very sensitive to this wellness conversation that, you know, tends to be very elitist. And for women, especially when we're kind of not earning on the dollar the same as men, we need tools that meet us where we are. And I was committed when I built Flo Living to make sure that it was something that was available to every woman.
Thank you so much. This was amazing. Thank you. It's just like, you know, heartwarming, and it was really a touching conversation for me.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to share all of this and to see you in Turkey soon.